Parolees committing more crimes. This really has been a big issue in this community over the past year, and it's got a lot of local police chiefs frustrated.
It sure has. So is anything being done to change the parole system? Brett Davidson takes a closer look in our New York State Exposed report. Brett.
Scott and Jenny, you've heard those chiefs say the system is broken. Tonight we take a look at what specific problems they say exist within parole, and I asked the governor directly if he plans to do anything this year to fix it. Thomas Johnson III, he killed a police officer. Michael Carruthers raped a 14-year-old girl. Sean Zimmer accused of robbing several gas stations and injuring a police officer. David Allagood awaits trial for murder after a shootout at the Gates Pub. All these men have one thing in common. They were on parole when they were arrested. With each new case, the refrain grows louder. The parole system is broken. And the most vocal critic is Gates Police Chief James VANBREDERODE.
So what would you identify as the biggest problems between police and parole, or as far as supervision of parolees?
Well, it's the inability of police to have any type of authority or powers to assist parole.
VANBREDERODE says since he began raising the issue, he has noticed better communication with parole on cases of immediate danger, but says for the most part, changes have been window dressing. He says the state needs to start by committing more resources to better track parolees.
How can you not be available or open 24 hours a day if you're supervising all these violent convicted felons and there's nobody working after 8 or 9 o'clock at night?
Next week, Governor Cuomo will outline his legislative agenda at his annual State of the State address. I asked him recently if that speech would include mention of parole reform.
We've had our police chiefs here get together and say that the parole system is broken. Is there anything in your next legislative session that will address parole reform?
I have not gotten any suggestions from them on parole reform that I'm aware of, but I'm always willing to listen and learn, and if there are parole suggestions that make sense, then certainly we would take them under advisement.
I took the governor's response to State Senator Joe ROBACH.
He said he hasn't gotten anything from the legislature. Do you see some reform efforts underway this next legislative session?
Absolutely.
ROBACH says he plans to submit legislation to make it mandatory that violent felons serve at least 80% of their sentences before they can become eligible for parole.
If somebody who's getting out of jail has to be supervised 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, doesn't it seem logical that they should be incarcerated and finishing out their sentence where they can damage or hurt no one else?
In response to the governor's answer about reform, VANBREDERODE says he and other local police chiefs plan to roll out their own plan in the coming days.
If that's what he said, then we clearly are ready to move forward with some proposals look, we don't want to just complain, we want to be part of the solution.
We were contacted this morning by the Department of Corrections, which oversees parole, in advance of our report tonight. We called back and emailed to find out if they wanted to respond to the calls for reform, but we never heard back from them. We don't know if the governor will talk about parole in his State of the State speech next week, but if you want him to address it and would like to offer your thoughts, here's the number at his Albany office. It's 518-474-8390. Scott and Janet.
Brett, thank you very much.